As a nonprofit leader, you probably would really like to be able to do a good job, make a big impact in the work you do, and maybe feel some balance in life and feeling like you are doing good work, but also true to your values and who you are and what's going on. What gets in the way of that? A lot of things. You probably have way more to do than ever possible. You're probably overwhelmed. The sector might get in the way the sector is ran. And, we're always short staff, and the staff we do get are underpaid. So they're often undereducated. And so we're dealing with that problem or shortages of staff. We've got these constant ebbs and flows of funding. There is weird policies that seem to change at the funder's whim. Uh, way too much to do and not enough resources to do it all with. All of that may prevent you from feeling like you're doing the impactful work you desire and finding that balance in life. And there are some other things that you may be doing in here that are also getting in the way. If you don't know me, I am leadership development coach Kathy Archer, and I spent about 25 years in the nonprofit sector as a leader, hit a couple big lows, and learned some things along the way. Ended up coming out on the other side, getting my coach training, and I now teach, coach, and mentor women leaders who are in the nonprofit sector who are feeling like they are drowning in their work, feeling like they're carrying it all themselves, and really don't have that support or level of confidence to do the job they want to do. I turn that around and I help them build those skills, develop that confidence, and find that balance and that way to lead with a values driven approach. Because I know your values are so incredibly important to you, and help you step into leadership, feel confident to do that with some tools at your fingertips. Now, this year, I published my second book, Character Driven Leadership. And in the very first part of it, I talk about three things that sometimes get in the way of you doing the work that you want to do in the way that you want to do that. And those three ways are: we are pleasing, performing, and perfecting. We're people pleasers. We have these high expectations. We're often overachievers. And we tend to slide into that perfectionism tendency. Now, last month I talked about perfectionism. Perfectionism is that belief that there should be no flaws, that we don't want anyone to see what's wrong with us. None of our imperfections should show. And that tends to lead us to really lean into staying late, doing more, pushing harder, not making decisions because it's not the right decision, spending a crazy amount of time on stuff until it's just right. So if you haven't watched that session, it will be, I can pop the link in after in the comments, but it will be where all the lives are. Just send me a DM and I will send you the link for that. So perfectionism is one of those things that gets in the way. Another thing that gets in the way is people pleasing. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Now, I think we all have a good idea what people pleasing is, but maybe sometimes we don't realize how far it is embedded in everything we do and the impact of it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to put some notes up. So, what is people pleasing? So this is the definition that comes right straight out of Character Driven Leadership. If you are interested in this book, it's anywhere you purchase your books, but I'll also put a link up on the screen. Let's see if I can do that right now, where you can get the first chapter for free. So if you want the first chapter to get a sense of if it's the right book for you, you can get that there. And then you can also get the first chapter there for free. All right. So what is people pleasing? It's prioritizing the needs of others, right? The needs and expectations of others over our own needs. And the reason we do that is because we want to be liked and accepted. Now, here's the catch. Even if that means sacrificing our own values or our own boundaries or our own well-being. Oh, that's rough, right? Like, why are we doing that? We do it because we want to be liked. And, it's we say, like, I don't care what people think about me, but we do. And it shows up by that constant need for approval, always available. Anybody got an open door policy and people can knock on your door? And they do all times of the day. Those constant interruptions that you let into your life are one of the examples that you're worried about what people think about you. Am I a good leader? Am I available? Am I responsive enough? That's that need to please. That's one example. Saying yes when you're already stretched too thin. Sure, I can sit on that committee. Absolutely, I'll come to that meeting. Yes, just, send me an email and I'll follow up with it. Those yeses, when you've got no more bandwidth for yeses, is a sign that you're sliding into that people pleasing phase. We're already stretched too thin. We don't have enough time to do what we're doing already. And those things that are actually important to us, that are priorities, keep getting pushed to the wayside. Uh, Taking on work that should be delegated. It's somebody else's responsibility. You are sure that somebody else could maybe even do it better, but maybe they wouldn't do it better, which is part of that reason sometimes why we don't delegate. I can do it better. It's easier if I do it. I'm just going to have to fix it. And there's this fear then that we're not going to please somebody else if our team puts out poor quality work, or they're already busy. My team has enough to do. I don't want to add to their burden. I don't want to overload them. So what do? I'll just do it. Avoiding conflicts or addressing issues. Ugh. I got to tell you, in the work that I do, this is one of the biggest things we tackle. Just pop a 1 into the comment box if you hate conflict or don't want to deal with those difficult conversations. It's hard. We don't want to upset the apple cart. We don't want to make somebody mad at us. We don't want to make somebody leave the company. We are afraid that if we go into that conversation, that something's going to happen and people are going to go, ugh, no, not me. All right. So the bottom line is we don't want to let people down, right? We don't want people to somehow be upset with us. That's part of what people pleasing is. So it's prioritizing the needs and expectations of others over our own needs, right? And the problem with that is that desire to be liked and accepted and fit in and belong is part of what gets us in the way and leads us to burnout, because we're sacrificing our own values and boundaries. Again, why do we do it? Belonging. We are hardwired for survival. Back in the caveman days, if you didn't fit in, you were pushed to the fringes and you were going to freeze to death or get left behind or get eaten by whoever was going to chase you down. Hardwired into our body, the need for belonging, to fit in. Now, many of us in leadership positions in the nonprofit sector move from frontline into leadership. So in that frontline position, we have friends, we have a circle of peers around us, and we go for lunch together and we talk about how annoyed we are with senior leadership, and we might socialize outside of work. When you move into leadership, you kind of lose that, and the lines become blurred about how do I now fit in. And so we're still trying to figure out how to fit into that. We also do this people pleasing because it's learned behavior. It's the way we grew up. It's the societal expectations that are on us. We have been taught from the time we were very little that women, girls, are compassionate. We're empathetic. We get along. We're collaborative. We don't rock the boat. And the thing is, if we do rock the boat, speak up, deal with those problems, hold somebody accountable, have those tough conversations, our fear, and maybe even a reality, is that we're seen as bitchy, bitter, bossy, negative, overpowering, controlling, right? All of those words. And so we've got what's called a double bind. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. If you play that game where you are getting along with everybody, then people are upset because you're not holding people accountable. We're not moving forward. You're not making decisions fast enough. If you do all of that, then people are like, I don't like you. So it's this balance that we've got going on, and we're trying to do both. All right. So that's what people pleasing is. This is why we do it. Now, what happens when we're people pleasing? Well, it's exhausting. Like, this is what leads to burnout. You can't make everybody happy all the time. And if you're trying to make everybody happy, you're not making yourself happy. You're sacrificing your own well-being. You're burning out. You're not taking your lunch breaks. You're working late. You're not getting the stuff done that you wanted to get done. So what do? You come in on Saturday morning or Sunday afternoon, or you get up at 3 a.m. like I did to get it done. You're doing what you need to do to get things done, and making sure that you're responding to everybody else's needs all the time. and it's draining, it's exhausting, and it's not sustainable. It also leads to a loss of integrity. So if you are saying it's important to me to get things done on time, and yet you're responding to everybody else's needs, your work might be late. Or we need to move this thing forward, but you're not making a decision because you can't figure out how to make it to please everybody. And you don't want to upset a certain person or a certain group of people. And so you keep putting off that decision, keep putting off that decision. And people are like, oh my God, she's so wishy washy. She never makes any decisions. She can't make up her mind. And that leads to that loss of integrity. So you have a set of values that you talk about. We need to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves and balancing work and life. But you're the one, this was absolutely me, you're the one that's always late and coming in on weekends. So what you say is important isn't being demonstrated. And so that when you're constantly people pleasing, it's leading to that lack of integrity. All right. Sorry, I gotta say no to the phone call coming in. Poor decision making. Again, we've talked about this, but you're inconsistent because you're flip-flopping based on who you want to please in the moment, who you're trying to make happy, what's the issue at hand. You're delaying it. You're just avoiding making that decision. Oh, I don't know how to do it and make everybody happy, or I don't know how to do it and make sure that this happens. There's never a decision is never black and white, especially in leadership. It is always gray. You're always going to have to pick and choose which part of that decision making sides is more important. And we're going to get to a tool to help you do that in a moment. But you are making choices that avoid conflict but fail addressing the core issue. You know, the vehicle, company vehicles was one that we struggled with at times. And, you know, there wasn't enough, there was only one or two vehicles and more than that for people to go around. And people would leave the vehicles messy, or they wouldn't fuel them up after, or they wouldn't fill out the paperwork after. Tons of issues. I mean, you're a leader, you know what kinds of things happen. And so I might address one of those, but I didn't really address the core issue that it's a lack of respect for your peers, right? We would add another, checklist or system in, but bottom line, it was you're not respecting the other people down on the team that are dealing with that messy car, lack of fuel. You took it when you didn't have it signed out, kind of thing. And so, because I'm trying to make everybody happy, I'm really making nobody happy, including myself. All right, impacts of people pleasing: exhausting, loss of integrity, poor decision making, lack of productivity. People knocking on your door all the time, interrupting you, inviting you to every meeting under the sun when you probably don't need to be there, doing other people's work when you should be delegating it, or you should be addressing the problems in their work. That leads to that lack of productivity. You're not getting your work done. And then all of that erodes the trust and the integrity that you have with your team. You appear indecisive. You don't know how to make a decision. People see you wishy-washy on your values, on your ethics, what you say. And so you're losing by people pleasing and trying to make everybody happy. You're actually losing the respect of the people on your team. Not good. So what to do? We need to balance that seeking the need and approval and need to be liked with doing what's best for the organization. And some people say, well, I can just stop seeking approval. Not necessarily. Now, in character-driven leadership, I talk about your role as a leader is not necessarily to have people like you. It's helpful. It's important to some degree, if in that you want people to respect you. You want people to value the way you lead, the impact you have, the support you give them, how you grow them, how you take the team forward. You want that level of respect. And some of that comes from not like so much, but respect you. And in order to have people respect you, you need to demonstrate compassion and empathy. You need to tune in and see them as human beings. You need to connect on certain levels. You could see that as, I need them to like me. And so, like I say, it's less about like and more about respect. But at the end of the day, you want to balance that with getting things done. You've got to get things done in an organization. And so you've got to balance the people that you work with that you're responsible for, that are doing the work with the work. How do you do that? You lead with integrity. So, if you've followed my work, if you've read my books, if you are a student in my membership, if you are a client with me, you probably have seen this loop. This is called the Infinite Leadership Loop. It is the tool that I use to teach slowing down and being more intentional as a leader. And it allows you to balance the inner work, which we often miss, the self-reflective work that is important to be an in integrity leader, a leader who leads with integrity, to balance that with the work you're doing. So what happens for many of us is this inner thinking is done unconsciously. We're like, thought loops and thought spirals, and we get, wrapped up in an idea, and we're way over here. And, I was telling a client yesterday, I could, you know, be sitting there thinking about my kid going to a basketball game, and like 30 seconds later, they're on the streets dead. Like, you just go your mind, and you're up at night, and you're like, you can't sleep. That's unconsciously letting these thoughts go through your head. What we want to do is turn this into more intentional self-reflection, so that we can be doing that intentional work, so that we're having that difference with our people. So the process is pause. We don't stop. We don't slow down. We don't step back and intentionally tune in to be self-reflective, to plan, to be strategic. We need to start to think about how to do that. So we need to pause. We need to create space in our day to just sit down and take a breath. We need to sometimes journal, go for a walk, sit down with some paper and pen and plan. That's that ponder place. So we pause, we ponder, we tune into what's going on, what's the values that are important to us, what's the impact we want to have. And then we're often doing some shifts or pivots in our perspectives, in our thinking. That takes us to proceed, which takes some courage sometimes, and engage with our people. So I'm going to take this loop, and we're going to break it into how we use this in terms of people pleasing. So again, if you have questions, pop them into the comment box. I'll answer them now, or I will answer them later. If you want links, or have questions about anything I'm talking about, you can send me a DM as well. Let me have a quick drink before I dive into this one. Okay, so first step is always to pause, right? And it's kind of like jumping off that hamster wheel. You're like, oh my God, I got this to do, and I have to do this to do. I'm so tired. I don't know how I'm going to get this done. If they would just do this, and you're like, oh, stop, like pause, slow down, take a step back. What that looks like, if you actually want to do this to make a big significant change in how you're showing up and how you're feeling, and the impact you're having as a leader, is to schedule it in. I totally encourage people to schedule in, like 15 minutes a day is enough. More is lovely, but 15 minutes to step back and tune in. Or once a week, kind of tune in that sort of maybe longer chunk of time. But if you're not pausing and stepping back, none of this is going to happen. The rest of this is not going to be done intentionally. You have to jump off that hamster wheel and pause. Then you're pondering. And when you're pondering, you're really looking at, here, let me make this bigger. There we go. When you're pondering, you're really looking at, what are my values? What's important to me? Growing my staff is important to me, but I just keep doing the work for them because I'm scared they're going to do it wrong, and I don't have time to invest in them. But I'm not leading with integrity if I keep doing the work for them. So clarifying your values. What's motivating my choices? Stepping back into doing some of that self-reflective work around, if I am having that continuous open door policy, what's motivating my choice? Why am I doing that? Well, I'm afraid of what people will think of me if I shut my door, say I'm not available. Okay, is that really what I want? To always be available and always feeling scattered and never have time to sink in and do some of those projects? No. Okay, so that's where this ponder comes in. You're looking at, what are the patterns I have? What are the problems that are showing up? Who are the people that are, there's typically similar kind of personalities that you are people pleasing with, or, struggling with. And so you're looking for some of those patterns. And that's what's called a self-reflective practice. Now, it's lovely if you have somebody to do that with. In many organizations, you will have a supervisor, and you're doing some self-reflective practice about your clients. We rarely get the opportunity to do that about ourselves. And so we have to create that space. I'm often doing it with my clients where I'm helping them do that self-reflective work to kind of dig that apart. What you're looking to do is create some shifts in the way you're thinking. Okay, no, maybe I don't want the open door policy, or maybe it's time to delegate that, or maybe I need to get better at making decisions, or whatever the thing is. Then how are you going to do that? You start to think about, okay, maybe I need some scripts for when people come to the door. Hey, can I interrupt you for a minute? Actually, no. I'm in the middle of a project. Could you come back at, in an hour? Or could we talk about it in our one-to-one tomorrow? Or could you pop over and talk to somebody else? Maybe you've got a peer who could perhaps give you an answer. Those scripts help you. The other thing that really, 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 really helps you is creating goals for yourself. If you look at not the typical performance appraisal goals, but if you really look at how you're going to grow, it's going to take things like productivity, emotional intelligence, and being able to regulate those emotions, setting boundaries, work life balance, learning to handle those tough conversations. Those aren't always things that are on a performance appraisal. And if they are, there's probably not a plan for how you're going to do it. When you have a plan, when you create a goal around the type of leader I want to be is responsive, not frazzled. Oh, okay. What's the difference? And how do I get there? We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Okay, so you've paused, you've pondered, you started to think, you're starting to see some shifts. At some point, you got to get back into action. And this takes courage and vulnerability. If you're going to say, actually, you know what? The work is not good enough. I used to fix people's timesheets left and right. And if I had just slowed down and actually handed them back and said, these are the consistent errors you're making. This is the correction you need to make. And I'm just going to hand it back to you every time you do it. Uh, it would have been different than me fixing it all the time. Now, I couldn't say that in a bitchy, cranky way. I needed to say it in an encouraging way. But that would take courage to have that conversation. It would take courage to say to somebody, actually, no, you can't interrupt me right now. It would take courage to say, I'm actually not going to get that done by tomorrow because I need to leave at 5 o'clock for my daughter's dance class. That takes courage and vulnerability. That's kind of the whole point in this, is once you've given yourself this, you actually sort of see that different way. And I often think of this as the sort of Hot Wheels loop. It takes like, a lot of energy to say, I know I need to say that. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that. But when you actually say it with the people, um, it's like lighter and it's freeing. And yes, sometimes it's still awkward and uncomfortable. But the more you do that, the easier it gets. And so this is the process to stop people pleasing. It really is to start being more intentional in the self-reflective piece so that you are able to have those conversations. If you have questions, pop them into the comments, either now or on the replay. I'll answer them. If you want to talk to me more individually, send me a DM. I am here for you. Let's talk about some of the tools. Okay, people pleasing, that constant need for approval, that sense of belonging. You want people to like you. It's important to be there. Number one thing that you want to start doing, and this is the number one course inside my membership that I tell everybody to do. I have a membership that helps leaders get a lot of the training you didn't get when you moved from frontline into leadership. The number one course is called Values Verification, and it is not simply naming your values. It is taking those values. One of the things that most of us will say is family is really, really important to me. But what does that mean to you? Does that mean that you have to be there every night for supper, or read your kids a bedtime story, or visit your parents once a year? What does it mean to you? For me, I got into a real challenge where I said when I moved into leadership, I had to travel. And at first I'm like once a month, and then it became twice a month. And then it became like sometimes, 2 or 3 times a month. And not only was I traveling to the city, which was an airplane ride away, I was traveling to the sites and I was getting home late. And it just became this sort of, that story that isn't true about you put a frog in cold water and hotter, it just stays there. That's what happened. It got out of control. And so I needed to step back and look at what family meant to me. I'm just going to pop this screen. Question on the screen. What if the project is under time constraints and tasks need to be done quickly? Absolutely. This is where we get into problems. Where if we're people pleasing, we are probably just doing it ourselves, right? We're just like, I just got to get it done. And this is where I was up at 3 a.m. doing the work myself. It's not as simple as I'm going to make this change today. This is why that loop is like a constant loop. It's the infinite leadership loop. It's bit by bit by bit, you make gradual changes. Maybe today I am going to do that myself, but I'm recognizing, and this is where I'm pausing and pondering, I'm recognizing this isn't sustainable. I cannot do this for the rest of my career. So I need to start stepping back, going, where do I need to develop my staff? Where can I delegate more? What's getting in the way of that? Maybe I need to advocate to senior leaders. You start to be more intentional on making little steps at a time. This isn't a switch that we're going to flip. This is a gradual growth journey. And so that comes down to, did I put it down here? Let me jump ahead. When I put these slides in here, I don't get to see I can't read the whole thing. There's what's called a decision-making framework. A decision-making framework helps us kind of go, in my course, I have, it's like 10 questions, I think it is, where we're like, what's the problem? Who's involved? What's the timeline? Have I, spent enough time thinking about this? Are there more people I need to get their opinions on? What's the deadline for making the decision? And it helps you go through and make that decision. Now, you're not going to do that on every single decision, but when you start to see that framework and start to think about it, a decision-making framework helps you go, we're on tight deadlines. It's not, the, sorry, I had another comment. Silly comment. It's not the, now I lost my train of thought. When you do the decision-making framework, you can help see that sometimes you just do have to do it. That's not people pleasing, that's leadership, that's decision-making. It's when you're doing it because you feel like, oh my God, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or I don't want to upset anything, or I want to make sure that I'm, seen as blah, 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 blah. Then that's leaning into people pleasing. Remember that balance, the people, you're balancing the need to get things done. And so sometimes you do. Okay. So back to one of the tools, values work. What really matters to me? And am I voicing my values? And am I living my list? What I often see people do, and what I have done, these are the things that are important to me: family, wellness, learning. But was I living that? No, I was traveling. I was overweight. I often say I was frumpy, dumpy, and grumpy. And at certain points in my time, I hadn't read a book in years. And I'm like, no wonder I feel like my soul is dying, because I'm not living my list. So that's the first thing we need to do, is really identify our values. Second thing is doing this self-reflective work. Journaling is what I call it. But it's, you might take the practice of every day. Remember, I said 15 minutes where you're pausing. Did I make any decisions today to please others? What physical clues were there? I was so exhausted at the end of that meeting because I just felt like I took on 6 more things that I know I don't have time to do. That's a clue that you're people pleasing, right? So when you start to do that self-reflective practice, you can start to see where those things are becoming a problem. So, setting those values, knowing what's important to you. Efficiency is important to me. Honesty is important to me. Integrity is important to me. Kindness is important to me. Identifying those values, right? And then looking at, am I living that list? And that self-reflective practice is going to help you do that. Now, back to goals, what I was talking about earlier. We are teleological beings, meaning we are always pointing ourselves in terms of a target. I'm heading for my Starbucks, right? Like, where you're going. I'm just trying to get through this big busy time, or get through this big fundraising event. We kind of are hardwired for targets. What we don't have are targets that are about our individual leadership style. I might say I want to be an honest leader, or I want to be a good leader, or I want to lead with integrity, or I want to be a balanced leader. What does that mean? In my book, Character Driven Leadership for Women, I talk about creating your character development plan. What's the traits you want to be known as? What's the legacy you want to leave? What's the thing you want people to say about you when you walk out the door, when they're standing at the coffee cooler or in smoker's corner or whatever? What do you want them to be saying about you? And how do you become that person? You need a plan for figuring that out. It's not just going to happen. And if you don't have what I call sort of a curriculum or a syllabus where you're saying, "Okay, I'm working on um, emotional regulation. I fall apart or I flip out or I don't know how to get into this conversation without shutting down, and so I avoid them." How are you learning that? Well, I would tell you to start to understand emotions better. I would tell you to go read Mark Brackett's work or Brene Brown's work, and I would tell you to start an emotions journal, and I would tell you maybe in coaching to bring some of those examples to our coaching call, and we would talk about what the triggers were and where you got shut down. That's the kind of work that you need to do to be a better leader. So if you're looking at setting better boundaries, what's the definition of setting better boundaries for you? Your curriculum, your plan, your targets are going to say, I'm home 3 nights a week by 6 o'clock. Okay. Not we're not looking for perfection. I'm not going to be home every night by 6 o'clock. That's just too far gone. Or maybe it's that I'm not going to pick up my computer after the kids are in bed. That might be your idea of balance. Somebody else's idea might be that they have an hour a day of deep work where there's no interruptions. You have to figure out what this means to you. That's why there's no cookie cutter plan. That's why in the book, I really walk you through how to do that work to create that character development plan. So it might be that you've developed some scripts around what you say to people when you feel like you're in that people pleasing mode. It might be addressing that open door policy. And rather than always having an open door policy, you've got office hours where people are able to come in. In my membership, I teach a course called Wellness at Work. It's not enough to refill at the end of the day. You have to figure out how to recharge your battery during your day. We are redline all day long. And we go home and we fill back up like 3/4. We come to work the next day 3/4, and we're going to try and like power through. You've got to take a lunch break, step away from the computer once in a while, create a little buffer between meetings, make sure you're eating, going to the bathroom, doing something to fill your soul. You've got to do that in micro moments at work, things you can do in 1 or 2 minutes. Very, very, very helpful. You got to learn to say no. Again, that decision-making framework. How am I making a decision? How do I know what the criteria are for making a decision? Having that simple decision-making framework can be helpful. If you want a link to a blog on that, send me a message and I will let you know. And then, it's that constant learning that we need to do. If we're not learning, you're just not doing the work. It's inner learning that you've really got to focus on. It's that growth and development that you need to do. And that's ultimately what helps you become a values-driven leader, who's leading with integrity, supporting your team. And it's not about sacrificing your responsibilities or your wellness. It's about living that list. This is the type of leader I want to be. These are the values I espouse to. This is my ethical, moral compass. And it lines up with how I'm living. And when you can do that, that's making that incredible difference. Now, if you want some help with this, if you want the framework, character-driven leadership is going to give you the framework. The book is going to give you the framework to help you understand that pause, ponder, pivot, proceed, the whole infinite leadership loop, how to put into practice those daily reflections, how to identify the type of leader you want to be, how to become a strengths-based leader. It's going to give you the framework. What often happens is we stop there, and without action, it's not going to change. And so that's why I created the membership. The membership is a space where you have access to all of these courses around time management, having tough conversations, one-to-one supervision, leading with integrity, the wellness kind of stuff, and a community of women who are going through similar things that you are. We meet twice a month. One of the calls is a mini training call where I'm pulling some of the content out because I know you don't always have time to go in and do it, where I'm pulling the content out and we're working through it together. Last month it was on that time management. How do I prioritize when everything seems to be a priority, right? That's what we were talking about last month. The second call every month is a non-scripted call. Whoever shows up brings the challenges of the day, and I facilitate a conversation around those challenges because it's $20 a month. You moved likely from frontline into leadership without the support and training to do it, and you likely do not have that support and training now. If you could have somebody in your corner whispering in your ear, if you could have somebody once a month say, "Oh my God, help me out with this," that's what I'm here for. I'm here for that. Sometimes people say it's like the supervision I don't get. Yes. I am an ever learner, so I'm always dropping tips and ideas and suggestions and resources to help you lead better. Little things that are practical that really help move the needle for you. Because again, if you're not taking action, nothing's going to change. If you're not stepping back and doing this intentionally, you're going to continue to be that people pleaser, or like we talked about last month, that perfectionism. um, you're just going to continue to fall into those old patterns and habits that have gotten to you to where you are. You're successful, but they're not going to get you to that next level where you're feeling successful and balanced and impactful, and less frazzled and crazy. And the nonprofit sector is not going to magically change overnight. It's our responsibility to start those ripples so that we're having that impact for the next generation. I don't want my kids and my granddaughters to go through the same experience that I had as a leader. And so I'm hoping that through my work and your work, that we'll start changing things and we'll start changing what's happening for leaders, uh, and start to, really create a different space. So, um, any questions? Pop them in. Character-driven leadership for women, really a really solid place to start. In September, I'm starting a course called Strengths-Based Leadership. So if you're interested in that, I can share the link as well. 4 weeks, we're going to dive into your Gallup strengths and your VIA character strengths. Gallup strengths or Clifton strengths are your talent strengths, the things you do well. Your VIA strengths are your character traits that make you you. So we're going to look at your results in community and talk about how you use your strengths to be a strength-based leader. Starts in September. I think it's November. A book club for character-driven leadership. So we're going to dive into the book Character-Driven Leadership, read it together over the course of 6 weeks, so you get a better understanding and you can start that application process. Any of those links, just send me a message. I will share them to you. Next month, so when I started today, I said there are sort of 3 things. We're pleasers, performers, and perfecters. Next month, we are going to talk about that overachiever in us and how sometimes that gets us into trouble and what we can do about it. Thank you for tuning in today. Please go make the rest of your day awesome.